Yeah, so I'm so happy that Dani and Rebecca could join us for this alum panel. This is, I guess, the first year we're doing it as a Zoom instead of in person. We usually did it like Lori students, and Dani and Rebecca, you probably attended alum panel as a senior, as a capstone student yourself. So now you are succeeded. So you are now our guest. And you're here to share all your successes and success stories and inspire my students, hopefully. And so maybe I will just, without further, I just wanted to kind of be as invisible as possible. So I want you to, and your producers, you guys can kind of generate some more organic conversation with my current students, capstone students, your junior in the same department. So maybe like Rebecca and Dani, who graduated first? I guess Rebecca, you graduated first, right? Yeah. So with Rebecca, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us about your journey, how you got there. I think you shared the story a little bit. You did it through fellowship. I think people will be dying to know how to get a job. That's probably number one priority. Rebecca, you and I had that conversation in your senior year. So it's really great that actually they're thinking about the same thing, same worries and fears, just aggravated by COVID. But you guys, probably Dani and Rebecca, you are in the same place. So if you don't mind sharing with us how you got there and how many rejections you got before you got there. I don't know, any kind of anecdotes and once you got there, how you came to this place. I think you've been there like about 2 years. And then maybe we can start from there. And I want you to everybody to jump in and ask questions freely. So yeah, Rebecca and then Dani after Rebecca. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, Dr. Chung, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
This is like really what a pleasure to be here. It's really fun. And I've missed you. It's really nice to see your face and hear your voice. So yeah, my name is Rebekah Romberg. I'm a podcast producer at Colorado Public Radio. I graduated from CSU in the comm department, and I also was in the journalism department in 2016. And I applied to a lot of different stuff. I'm trying to think of numbers at this point. I don't know. It was kind of just the standard, like what you do, right? Like you just apply to a bunch of different stuff and see what sticks. I heard back from very few of those applications. And for the ones that I did hear back from, I was surprised at how long it took for me to hear back. But yeah, I saw my dad is like a classic millennial helicopter parent. Bless his heart, I love him. But he was sending me a lot of different job listings and stuff, and a lot of things that I wasn't particularly interested in, but he did send me the news fellowship application for CPR. And I looked at it and thought that that really didn't fit my skill set very well, but they also had a different fellowship that was a really good fit for me. So I applied to that one and got that fellowship. And so it was a year-long program, and actually the person who ended up getting the news fellowship is also a CSU graduate, and she also still works at CPR. She's on the new environmental team. So yeah, we were both in the fellowship for, I think it ended up being 9 months, and then we got offered full-time positions. And I was in the production department to start with, doing a lot of like promotional production. So making like the 30-second, a lot of like interstitial stuff that you hear on the radio, and got to do some more like long form story kind of featurey types things. And now it's just started in March on the new audio innovation studio doing podcast producing. I guess just like a little bit more about what I did at CSU. Dani and I met at KCSU. We both worked there, and I was in the film minor program, so lots of film classes. I worked with Carol on the ACT Film Festival. So I think those are kind of like highlights of different types of experience that I have if you're interested in any of that. Yeah, I'll go
CPD,
to Dani.
right? You also did CPD?
Oh, CPD, yeah.
We have so
Our
many
team.
parallels between
Yeah.
what we did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just do that, you'll get a job, it's fine. So I'll let you, are you finished?
I'm done, yes.
Okay, cool. Hi guys, I'm Dani. So oddly enough, me and Rebekah have so many different parallels just at CSU. I was a communications major. I minored in film, helped out with the ACT Film Festival, was at the radio station and was the training manager and DJ, and kind of kickstarted and started the film department at the radio station just because we hadn't really gotten into that. And so it was, if I can speak on something to do while you're still in school, and I know again it's kind of weird with COVID all happening right now, but just seeing what you can play around with while you're in school, that then it'll help you later. Maybe you don't know it yet, but it'll help you later. Just be like, okay, let's start a film program, right? So I started that at KCSU and started filming, editing, playing around with that, and realized that I really liked the back end of production. And because for the longest time, I was so unsure of exactly what lane I wanted to go to, as I'm sure many of you are. And so from there, I just kind of discovered I liked that area of production. And so after school, I went straight into PA work, so production assistant work on films and television shows. And for that, you kind of got to find the area that you go into. So for me, I'm from the Midwest, and the Midwest has quite a large film industry, oddly enough, because they have a big tax break in Ohio. So films like to go there because they can make bigger films for less money. And so I went there, and I personally had a connection through someone I knew someone who was a producer on that show, and they got me one day. And that's, I think, if I, put a pin in it there, the people that you know going into these next few years, like someone who knows someone who knows someone who has a job at where you want a job. So I know in school, so many professors were telling me, like, go to your LinkedIn connections. I'm like, but it's like, it's real. You should do that. So I got one day at as a PA on a film in Cleveland, Ohio. And from there, I was like, okay, I have one day to show that this is something that I can do. And so I just worked hard and was attentive and asked as many questions as I could, and was the best production assistant I could possibly be. And they ended up asking me back for the rest of the show, which was like 3 more weeks of production. And so from there, I just kept making connections. And I know I keep saying that word, but that's the whole thing that's gotten me from where I was in my career to where I am now, is meeting people, making a good impression, and not like a fake impression, but like really making an impression on them and keeping in contact with them, and then seeing where it takes you from then on out. And so from there, I got more jobs on other films and other TV shows, and it eventually led me out to Los Angeles, which is where I am now. And just to kind of hop, skip, and jump to, for the past 2 years, I got a job at a new media production company, working as a production coordinator for, we do YouTube content primarily, and then and we have a podcast also. And so another parallel between me and Rebekah. So essentially I do that. I do production coordinating on a bunch of videos and production on a podcast. And obviously there's so much more to go in depth there, but that's a quick run around of that story.
So any questions? I just said that I want to speak as little as possible and let you actually connect. Then you just talk about the importance of networking, and this is a great opportunity to to have somebody who can introduce you to some opportunities in this industry. I know that several of you are interested in the media industry. Any questions so far? So, I mean, just going back to just after your graduation, is there anything you would have done differently about job searches? What do you think, just thinking back? I mean, Dani, you're very lucky to get into the industry, which is extremely difficult. Rebekah, you had some difficulty initially applying randomly. And is there any like a secret you found or on any hack, interview hack or the job search hack? Yeah.
A quick thought that I had on that was that there was times in between each one of these jobs that I was like, what next? Where to next? And I'd say the biggest thing that helped me and what I wish I could have done more is informational interviews. Someone shared this idea with me that you could reach out to someone not for a job, but just to ask them what they do and kind of practice interviews and go in and you know, out of it, they might then end up connecting you with someone, but that's not the goal. It's just kind of, hey, what's going on here? What do you do as a business? And then it gets you to be able to practice. I did that a couple times and I royally failed at all of them, I felt like, but I learned the most out of them. And so I wish I could have done more of those, because even now I bet I could be even better at interviewing, but that's one thing I would say.
Yeah, I think this is somewhat universal, that job searches are like emotionally and spiritually the worst. And it's really hard to motivate yourself the way that you like may normally motivate yourself. And I think looking back, I just wish I would have been a little bit less in my head about some of that kind of stuff. And it's really all about just like being proactive, is what I've found. And obviously, like, it can be really discouraging not hearing back from people and sending out all of these different things. But I think the persistence and I guess I don't really know what type of advice to give for that kind of emotional toll, but like, just remind yourself that you are like a qualified candidate and you have things to bring, and like, don't let that sort of procrastination that sort of sets in keep you from opportunities. Like I applied for NPR internships, and obviously like things worked out great for me. Like I am happy where I am, but I got a call back from Wait, Don't Tell Me. And I psyched myself up so much that I didn't call them back. And by the time I did call them back, they were like, yeah, we hired someone who actually wanted this job. So just like little things like that, where it's like, I don't know, if there's any self-saboteur in you, like just punch that person in the face, is like the best advice I feel like I can give.
I would absolutely agree with that. I'd say the biggest competition you have in like this job search and in your journey into the communications or media world is gonna be yourself, because you're either not gonna like give yourself enough credit or walk into the room confident enough or allow yourself to kind of like step past that like level of fear. And just because, as Rebekah said, you're all qualified. I know the department, communications and film, that department, like these professors are all getting you equipped. And although you might not know exactly how everything applies, it'll come up later. It's gonna come out. And so it's like, trust your instinct and your own knowledge of this field, and then just, yeah, you face her head on. And I'm serious about that.
It's funny, Rebekah, you mentioned Wait, Don't Tell Me, because Scott's cousin is a producer. You could have reached out to us. So you don't even know like a network you could have had, right? You really have to reach out to people, right? I know I'm not that person. I'm an Asian. I don't like bother people. But if you don't like to bother people, then you will not get a job in the entertainment industry, right? Yeah. Everybody wants that industry, and people are very proactive. And self-promotional. So yeah, just reaching out to really like believe in yourself and reaching out to people, like even if you feel your professor know nothing, not nobody in the industry. Actually, it's kind of interesting you mentioned because you would have recommended you highly. He would have called his cousin.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so yeah. But so I have a question from Carol that can you speak about the effect of the COVID-19? I think COVID-19 probably hit the entertainment industry, Hollywood especially, then Europe, with television and movie industry. I just cannot imagine, how much that affected, the COVID affected Hollywood and entertainment industry. Maybe less radio, but yeah, could you kind of talk about the trend, how what the candidates should prepare for this particular job market, if you have any insiders information in the industry? Yeah, that would be helpful for students braving themselves on this job market.
Yeah.
Sorry, what, Dani? Do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I can take it. So Hollywood, it was a pretty crazy thing to see, because obviously that's how this whole city is run, is production. And so in the first, month or two of it, everybody was like, okay, we're good. And then as everyone in this world is freelance, actors, production, everything, even like the biggest producers out there, they're waiting for their next job. One of my best friends is a director, and she, same thing, very, very awesome director, has directed really big things, and still she's waiting for her next job. And so what happened was people stuck around for the first 2 months, and then they're like, we're out. Like, you can't afford to live in the city unless you're working. And so a lot of people had to leave. And so that was the biggest thing, or the craziest thing to see, is kind of an empty, not lively city here. It was very very unmotivated. It was very just kind of sad to see, because you sit there in the entertainment industry, you're like, what opportunities do I have? Where can I grow? Where can I move out of this job into another one? A lot of people that are coming out of college searching for a job, it just wasn't the time. And so if I can provide anything good, it's that everything has started to kick back up again. It's just with new regulations and new rules and a little bit more of a skeleton crew. So larger productions are now smaller productions, and it's kind of helpful because now they have to stick to penalty times and hours. So usually a day is like a 12-hour day in shooting film, television, music videos, anything like that. And so you can't do overtime now. So for some reason, COVID has made it not go into overtime and made people pay attention to lunch hours, which is always a crazy thing. And so the rules are just stricter. Everyone's just kind of paying attention to the regulations because there's someone on set that is the COVID master, they're watching everything. And so the good thing is that the industry is picking back up. It's just had to revamp. It had to turn around and say, okay, how do we make this work through this pandemic? How do we make this work through this? And luckily it's full of a bunch of creatives and innovators. And so we were able to kind of kick it around. The interesting thing I will say is, so I work in the new media. And so it's not, I've gotten work in Hollywood and traditional Hollywood, but my full-time job is working in YouTube and this content that's thriving right now. And so this area of everyone is home and wanting to consume content. They can't consume their new Netflix show because they're not able to produce, which Netflix actually just started producing their first, or they're back in production with one of their first 2 shows. But this new media, people are home, and YouTubers can film and push it out to an audience that's also home wanting to consume. And so this market actually boomed during COVID. It actually went up. And if you're able to capitalize on that, then you had more success. And what happened was a lot of traditional media actors and producers, and they started making content that was smaller scale. They realized that they could take this big Hollywood production and turn it into something that they could do at home. And so it shifted everyone's mind, because in Los Angeles, there's this pretentiousness against traditional media and new media, where they like to keep it completely separate. And it's the most interwoven I've seen it yet. So I think that's a good thing that's come out of it. And so things are still happening. We just kind of had to like shake it up a little bit and rewrite the rules.
Yeah, with radio and podcasting, it's sort of like a mixed bag. Like I am firmly in the public radio world, so I don't know. I try to keep up with commercial radio, but they're different enough that I don't know exactly what's going on there. But I mean, there's definitely been some big ramifications, lots of like mass layoffs for a lot of really big public radio stations across the country. And somehow CPR is very financially sound, and we haven't had any layoffs yet. So very grateful for that. But yeah, it's sort of interesting to Dani's point about like being able to do stuff from home. Podcasting especially is so portable, and especially in contrast to radio, where you have such a huge broadcast infrastructure that has to be maintained, and there's sort of like a barrier to entry there, because you have to like have the technical side to be able to get it all out. With podcasting, there's been a lot of growth and also shrinking at the same time, where there are like an absurd amount of podcasts. The market is very, very saturated. But what's starting to happen now, when the pandemic first started, listening dropped like substantially for both radio and podcasting. Radio makes total sense, right? Because like people most likely are listening to radio in their cars, and once commutes are gone, no one's listening to the radio anymore. Well, that's not true. There's some people, but and bless those people. But podcasts were also a very like commuter centric thing, and so when people didn't have to like ride the subway for 2 hours every single day, a lot of big shows saw drops in their numbers. But that's starting to pick up again. And yeah, it's the pandemic is hitting every industry in its own way, right? So if you want me to expand more on that, I feel like those are it's kind of the nuts and bolts.
It's absolutely how podcast and radio is something that you think is consumable always, even is hit through when people stop moving, and it makes you start thinking about how and when we're consuming our media. And so
right,
for podcasts, I guess you're bored at home, but sometimes you don't want to just click something on.
Right. Well, and the other thing, I'd be really interested to know what your experience has been with this, Dani. Like the kind of podcasting world that I live in is very news centric. And so we're having a lot of conversations right now about news fatigue, about like what people actually want to be listening to right now, about how we are contributing to the conversation about equity, inclusion, and diversity, and elevating Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Like there's a lot, and like industry wide also, there's been a lot of reckoning for a lot of like kind of old guard white executives who have really had to, I guess, acknowledge the damage that they had done. There's like a kind of like a mass retirement in some ways. So it's not just the pandemic. I mean, it's all of these associated movements that are coming along with it.
100%. I mean, it's all happening at one time. It's a mass rewrite is how I've been framing it in my mind. Is everyone?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Stripped down the script and they're rewriting. They're like, okay, let's figure this out. I mean, news fatigue, that's a great phrase, great word, because we're an entertainment-based podcast, but even still, it's as media that's still being put out, you're like, okay, so how can I contribute to the growth of people's minds who are listening to this, but also be a source of entertainment and be a source of a little bit of a distraction without continuing to perpetuate maybe the negative cycles that they've been in the past, you know? And so for these guys that at least I work with, it's been a big lesson for them to figure out how to use their voices for something that can start to move the world forward and be someone who can provide something of value versus just being like entertainment and not of value. You know, I think people got really complacent, and a lot of media, like entertainment media, was just okay just spreading the bad news or spreading the drama or spreading everything that's not good going on right now. And right now we're tired of hearing what's not good. We got to hear what's changing and what's positive and what's moving forward. And so it's been an interesting thing on the entertainment side.
Yeah, that's all great information. I'm also glad to hear. Yeah, there's of course, the big productions might have been delayed, but there's a new opportunity in social media and new media area. So while you guys are sharing this wonderful information, we get a couple of questions. And Matt, would you mind actually asking a question yourself? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just like wondering because like through the job search, if you guys had to just take the first job that came available to you, or if you just waited until you found a better opportunity and it was something that you actually wanted to do. Because that seems like something that's pretty common. People just take the first job that's readily available for them. They don't really know exactly what they want to do yet. And like, I kind of have an idea, but it's going to take a little while to get in the door. So
You start.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. I got really, really lucky in this circumstance because the fellowship at CPR really was like, it was like a dream job for me as like an entry-level position. It was just, I couldn't have asked for a better thing. So I got lucky, like that was the first job that I got offered after applying for a lot of jobs and not hearing back to any of them. That was the first job I got offered, and I accepted it very quickly. And then that's when the wait, don't tell me thing happened. And then I was like, what have I done? But I will say, like, going into the job market and kind of thinking about that point, like, okay, when am I going to need to start like making sacrifices for what I want in a job? And I went into it with a philosophy of, I'm going to like set myself a timeline, and I'm only going to apply for jobs that I genuinely would want to work for 6 months. Like that's that I'm going to push really, really hard for 6 months and do that. Okay. And if that doesn't work out for me, then I'll expand like my criteria, I guess, and say like, because my criteria was pretty much like, I want to be in public radio, and I want to be involved in like the production side of it. I want to physically be like editing stuff. And so then it was like, okay, like if after that point, maybe I'll expand, I'll look into like commercial radio, I'll look into like some other ancillary stuff that maybe would be like a foot in the door, and then I could transition. So I had sort of like a tiered idea of what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. But I also think like something that one of my friends from KCSU actually told me, he graduated a year ahead of me, and he told me after the fact was like, think about when you're interviewing for jobs, most of the time, like those people want you to be the candidate. Like the reason why they're hiring for a job is because they need help, and their lives are harder because that position is not filled. So they want you to be the person as much as you want to be the person, which I think is really helpful to like a mindset to have going into it. The other thing that I thought was really helpful in that conversation I had with him was like, you're also interviewing those people as much as they're interviewing you. So if you go into an interview and they're giving you weird vibes, like, and you feel comfortable saying, I'm not ready to say yes to this, I would say, yeah, trust your gut if you're kind of getting some weird vibes there. But to actually answer your question, it just sort of depends on your situation, I think, and kind of if you feel like you really need that job, then you should take it. But I think like the idealistic part of me is like, no, you don't have to take the first job that you get offered.
Yeah, I had a second question in there too about like communications being so broad and like finding something that's applicable to what we learn and stuff. So that kind of answered that one too. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Dani, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, it was, I mean, very much along the same lines of what you said, so I'll be short. But I think you do have the chance to find what you enjoy. There's no reason to be like stuck right into a job just because you're like out of desperation, you know, and that's not going to get you to the right space mentally. And we all know we need to preserve our mental health more than anything. It's not as important as money or career, or like these things are, you know, something maybe our parents taught us are crazy important, but, you know, take a second and give yourself that 6 months, give yourself that time to say, okay, I'm going to really focus on the job that I really want. And I see Nellie asked about like a portfolio of work. That's another thing. It's just like understand what work and experience you have before and what you really enjoyed out of that, and put that together and say, okay, like this is what I want to start to dive into. And if that job doesn't fill that, it's really not worth taking that job just for the money, unless it's something short term where I could speak on just like a lot of the production jobs, they're 3 weeks, you know, and if you don't know anything about it, you jump in, you do it for 3 weeks, and then you're like, wow, that was crazy, you know, and then you move on to the next one. But if it's a career and like a full-time position, I would, you know, take a second to really understand it and interview them as much as they're interviewing you.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Actually, Nelly, Dani refers to your question already, but would you mind actually asking your question and to both of them, and maybe elaborate whatever you wanted to elaborate?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I don't really have like a ton of stuff at the moment that I could like bring to a job, but like physically, I guess, as far as like a portfolio. But I was wondering if you guys think that that's like something important to have, or like how, if it is, like how you did that, or how you would suggest doing it, I guess.
My initial like first thing I want to ask is, it completely depends on what you're getting into, you know. So like a resume for a job that's like in a corporate world is very different from like a production sheet of what you've done in the past, or a portfolio for what you've edited. Like, so it's a reel of what you've edited. Is it a resume saying I know how to, you know, staple papers, or is it a here's my here's the productions that I've worked on in the past? And so it entirely depends. And so I want to ask you, I guess, do you know generally if like the field that you're trying to get into?
Generally, I'd want to do something with media, probably production-ish type stuff. I don't really know specifically, but something in that realm.
So if it's hands-on production, like you're there and you're working with people, or working with like software, working with that, like you're gonna want to show that you know how to do. So say you're editing, for example, you're gonna want to say, I know how to work on Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, and here is some work that I've done previously on those softwares. And so like that would be the portfolio that matters. But it's going to be very specific. And so I would pay attention to the specific job rather than taking like a blanket, here's some things I've done, and then giving. Okay. Rebekah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would echo that entirely. I actually just went to a webinar with the head of, he's like the headhunter for NPR. And it was like, how do you make a resume? And he was talking through it. And one of the things that he said that I learned at the CSU Career Center is every application is an individual thing. And as much as it hurts, it's like you can't make like a form letter and just send it to everybody. Like you have to look at the job description and really pay attention to like what skills are they asking for, and then feed that back to them in your cover letter and in your resume. And to get to your question about like materials and stuff like that, I do think having like in the news world, in my experience, having clips is really important, because it's almost like when you're writing a research paper and you're like quoting other articles, like this is like your evidence, right? Like you can say on a resume, I'm a strong writer, but if you submit a piece that has strong writing in it, then people are going to take you more seriously. And so I do think clips or or videos or audio. Like I do think that's pretty important.
And use your resources such as forget the name of it already, but the CSU like center, and like use them and ask them questions. And then when you have a job that's like lists things that it's looking for you to have, maybe that's not the job that you can take right now, but then be like, okay, well, let me use this time that I have at CSU to get into that stuff, to try it, to learn. It's like, well, I don't know how to use this right now, or I don't know how to cut up these news clips now, but now I know these are the things that this job needs. So let me work on it and get those things.
Yeah. And I think also like that experience is going to help you kind of hone in on what it is that you actually like doing, right? Like if it's like, oh, I want to go into video, and then you go out and you go and shoot. Like for me, I experienced this. I was like, I love film, like video is amazing. I'm totally going to like be a video person. And then I just found like cameras were hard, and every time I took one out, I messed it up and I hated what I brought back. And it was like, oh, okay, like video's too hard for you. Like you should do audio because that's like what connects with you and it's easy, and like you don't have to like convince yourself that you like it. You just go out and do it. So I think that it's also kind of like a test of like passion. What are you going to be excited about doing every day?
100%.
Thank you.
Actually, and are there any questions? I just wanted to piggyback on Nelly's question. Both of you work in student media. I think that probably helped you get this job. So how did you actually package that? You know, how did you let people know you had this amazing experience? Actually, Rebekah, you said that you need an evidence. But from the like, how did you present it in your cover letter or something like, or resume, or did you mention it in your interview, like, or CPD experience? You had some other experience. How did you market what you learned at CSU or classes or your student media activities? What's the best way to present it in job search situation?
That's a great question.
Go for it.
I'm trying to think.
Okay,
Dani, do you want to go first?
So for me, in my original production assistant jobs, it was less resume and anything like that. Like that was a purely connection based thing, and like show up and show that you can do it. And so there's that, move that to the side. And then in my jobs now, it's very much a show, don't tell. And as we talked about, just like including those pieces. And for me, it was cold emailing and just saying, okay, here's not just what I want to do, but here's why I can do it. And so in the job that I am right now, it was a cold outreach saying, this is the work that I've done before. It was very, very simple, very not too many words and not too much to grasp, because if someone's looking at an email that they have so many emails, you know, they're just going to be like, okay, what? So I personally made a video. So I said, this is me. And then I described a little bit of a bio of what I've done, the production work that I've done, the willingness to kind of jump in to anything that I've done. And this, like I said, is an email rather than like a cover letter resume. And so I think it's going to change for all of you guys, depending on what job that is. But I wouldn't be afraid of cold emails. So it was a short one paragraph. And then I made a video. I edited together a video of me. It was kind of a little bit of a comedy type video because my job is in that new media YouTube world. And so that's more okay than like a corporate job. You probably shouldn't do that if you're getting a job in an office. But just saying, here's all the things I said I could do, and here's proof in a, you know, creative, fun way. Used my editing and kind of chopped it all together and then included that video. And so for me, it was very much that presentation of short, succinct, here's what I can do and here's proof that I can do it. Again, for me, it was a lot of physical here. I can think on my feet. I can go and get anything for you. And this was a very much entry level at the time. So it wasn't everything that I'm doing now, but also understand that you can grow higher into your position. I think that's think that's the end of the sentence for me. It's very much just show and tell and short emails.
Yeah, I feel like just kind of, I think the best way to explain your experience is like how your experience is going to help that employer, right? So I think like when I applied for the production fellowship, I think I really highlighted that, you know, I've produced promos just as you want me to do in this job. I have voiced things just as you want me to do. And so like, it just, again, I hate to harp too much on the job description, but any kernel that you can pick out of the job description and then have a specific example of like, when I was at KCSU, I spent, you know, now I've already lost my train of thought of what point I was trying to make. I'm sorry, but
description to what you're doing, because if someone just
Yeah.
submits a resume, it's just wasted space at that point. You're like, okay, so you're saying all these things, but what can you do? Because I'm not going to take the time to like ask you all these. Just tell me, you know?
Right. Well, and I think also like building off of what Dani was saying about informational interviews, as I'm sure you all well know, I mean, it's already been said, like communications is super broad. There are a lot of different ways that you can go with it. And so if what Dani and I are talking about feels a little bit too specific or granular, it's like, if for you, you're like, I'm not going into podcasting, I'm not going into production, I want to do this other thing. Reaching out to someone who has the job that you want and just asking them like, how did you get where you are? People love talking about themselves. So like people are surprisingly generous with their time, I think. If you just reach out and say like, you have my dream job and I'm just trying to figure out like how I can get there.
100%. I echo that.
Any questions? Yeah, I'm sorry, Dani, go ahead.
I say the same thing. I was like, I would love to hear what you guys are interested in and no stress into exactly what that is. I know that's a crazy thing because even me sometimes now I'm like, what am I doing? You know, and it's gonna feel like that for however long, but I'm just curious what you guys are interested in right now, even if it's just like some little ping of something that's led you in a direction, but I'm just curious where you guys are at, whoever's willing to speak.
I had a little bit of a question, and it's kind of like specific to, I guess like video and media production. And I've been working like a lot with like for like some internships I had like with like DaVinci Resolve and like a lot of like softwares that like are already free. And like I want to get more into like Adobe Premiere because like I know that's like what a lot of people like, that's like the most popular one, but also it's like over like $200. And I was just wondering like if there's a way to like practice with it without having to like
Yeah. So a lot of people have actually switched over to Final Cut, and I realized that it's cheaper than all the Adobe products. And so I would first maybe look into that if you're willing to pay. I think it's a lot less. There's a 2-month trial on it too. And so you could also sign up for the 2-month trial on Final Cut. And also you could even just start with, iMovie and start with these precursor things that either way, no matter the software you're jumping into, it's gonna feel generally the same. There's a lot of differences, but once you start understanding the concepts of editing, like it's gonna transfer to any software. And I would suggest Final Cut actually, because I just got pushed to switch over to Final Cut because it's the new thing. It's more compatible with Apple. There's more plugins that you can like add to it. And yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you all know this, but I'll just say it out loud, like YouTube tutorials, like that's super helpful, I think, whenever you're learning any sort of new software. And the other thing I'll plug with the iMovie thing that you said, Dani, was like, yeah, and this connects back to having clips and stuff, is like, if you can make do with softwares that are not necessarily like on these applications, but they're free and you have access to them, that can still, as long as you can demonstrate what you can do, then people are going to be interested. And just as a quick example, there's, if anyone is interested in audio, there's a really, really great website called Transom. And they do all kinds of different training. It's a really comprehensive, like really, really helpful resource. But one of the other things that they do is kind of like highlight new voices. And they sent an email out last week from, it was a piece that was like 7 minutes long from a podcaster in the UK who had never really done audio before. And she edited the whole thing on GarageBand, and people like, and these like kind of like giants in the industry were like, you have an ear. And she did that on GarageBand, and now she's like a featured article on Transom, which is, I don't know, it's like a big deal. So yeah.
I was just piggybacking off of that. There's a lot of people that are out here, and they use their phones. They use iMovie on their phone. They use like, you don't need to use the biggest software. Now, the cool thing, maybe you just like hop on those free trials and get a general understanding of them. So if that job application does say we specifically use Final Cut or Adobe, you have a general understanding of it. But if you have the skill to make something happen in any software, such as producing something amazing audio-wise in GarageBand, then you're going to be able to transfer that over. So I wouldn't worry about spending the money on like an expensive software right now. I would just kind of get your feet wet in the free trials. And I think with the college email, you should be able to get like a massive discount on Adobe and Final Cut. I banked off of that for like a year after I graduated. So.
Yeah, I know that you guys and most of your graduating, maybe Rennie might work for you. Actually, Rocky Mountain Student Media, they train you how to make video and edit video for free, and you have access to their facilities. The catch is you have to work for them, I think 8 hours per week or something, and you actually have to make use for them. But that's actually part of the training, because you get an opportunity, you have this evidence that you work for them. So I think that might work for you or anybody who are interested. I can actually send out that information, Rocky Mountain Student Media, that information. They have a free training program, and they have everything. They have a $30,000 cameras and editing equipment.
Are any of you guys in student media?
Yeah.
Who said yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. You say you are asking my students who are doing student media. I think there's one person who is doing newspaper. He's not attending today. Anybody else?
I would suggest popping in. If media is something that you are interested in, just say, hey, everyone, I believe is wonderful in there. I think there's a couple people that are probably still there from when I was there, but it's always a good crew, always a good vibe. And so if you're interested in the media world, pop in, say, hey, just be like, Dani and Rebekah sent you. Actually say that, see what happens. And just pop in and say, hey, it's like, it's not going to hurt you, and it's going to expand your brain into like all these new things people are doing, and maybe something will catch on, and having that experience is very helpful for me. So.
And yeah, like the peer learning that happens at student media is really valuable. Like I learned Audition from Luke Beachide, who was just a random guy at KCSU. And I literally used it every single day. So the peer learning is really helpful. Yeah. And just the networking again also is good. Obviously there are some people in student media that you'll never talk to again, but there are also, I don't know, connections are connections.
100%. Somewhere down the road, someone will pop up again like this.
Yeah, I heard that it's a really great environment, just like what you said. You go there and you hang out with these people who are interested in the same thing. The only thing is that because of COVID, I don't know how student media newsroom, editing room looks like anymore. But yeah, in normal time, you're lucky that you were there before COVID. And normal time, I heard great things about just the vibe.
Yeah, I guess do you have, what's going on with classes? Are you all doing virtual primarily, or are you on campus at all?
So it's a hybrid. So I think 30% of classes are in person, 30% like online, and another 30% hybrid. Ours is hybrid, so we meet just once a week instead of twice a week, but we have to wear a mask and 6 feet distancing. Seats are already rearranged, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Actually, you can understand people over mask. I was surprised.
Yeah.
And people still present with masks on, but yeah, it's not quite the same. And but those who are motivated can get a lot because like we have a lot of time. Rebekah, you took that class, my American chemistry class. We never had any time to discuss. Now we have a lot of time because the whole 1 hour and 15 minutes are devoted to discussion. And I did the quizzes online. So we don't have to spend 20 minutes on quizzes. So actually those who are motivated can get a lot out of it, but you don't know, like some people probably don't listen to my lectures, then on Zoom, then they lose a lot. They get that basic information. So I think it's interesting. Hybrid, yeah, exactly. It's hybrid. It's really
Well, yeah, I
it's
commend all of
quite
you. It's a
nice,
weird, weird world right now.
You rely on a lot of Canvas stuff because if teachers don't put stuff in Canvas, then you don't know what you're doing really.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oof.
Any questions? Yeah, even if it's not just related specifically about these areas, any anxiety. And actually, Rebekah, I wanted to go back to that time when we had the conversation because I thought that you're exceptional students, you know, but you just felt like that they, I know how long was it? Like it's 3 years ago or 4 years?
Yeah.
4 years ago. That you felt like you're not good enough for the job market. You had a lot of worries, and actually, I thank you for that card you sent me. That you mentioned that that day on the thank you card you left me before you graduated. So I just want you to kind of go back that time, how you overcame that uncertainty and worries, anxiety. I don't know how long it took you to get that job. Probably several months, right? Or if not a year or full year. So I don't know how.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
I don't know. Go ahead. I that stuck with me, and I actually shared that story with my students. How somebody like you who are exceptional and had all this experience, and you're honor students, and then you still felt very unsure about yourself. I'm very proud of you because there was another student whose dream was to get a job in his American life. She was another NPR enthusiast, but she gave up on her dream. So I'm very proud. She was another student media person, JMC student. I'm very proud of you because I hear this like NPR talk about how they have these Ivy League interns who wanted to work for NPR for free, right? There are a lot of Ivy League students who wanted to just get experience from NPR. So yeah, I think you really succeeded, and I'm so happy that you actually got what you wanted. But can we kind of go back to that time and what took you to overcome that uncertainty about yourself?
That's so sweet. That's really, really sweet. Yeah, I think it's funny in hindsight because I started at CPR the July after graduating. So in retrospect, I kind of look back on that version of myself, and I'm just kind of like, oh, honey, because it all came together very quickly, and I think. I don't know if any of you are feeling this way. I found my last semester at CSU simultaneously like so magical and also like extremely painful because I loved my time at CSU, and seeing it come to an end was really, really hard for me. And so I think the kind of discomfort and the anxiety that was coming out when I was talking to Dr. Chung about the future and all of that, I think what ultimately got me past all of that was just believing in myself, which I feel like is so cheesy and cliche. But you have to be your biggest advocate, and you have to be your biggest cheerleader. And that was, I think, the lesson that I learned in that circumstance was just that, like, trust what you bring to the table and kind of see your blind spots or the things that you don't have, and find the ways to fill those things in. So, you know, when I was applying for that news fellowship, I, you know, needed more hard news clips and stuff. And so I was like, okay, like I'm going to go out and I'm going to report on stuff. And I look back at those stories and they're very bad, but like I tried, you know? So I think just not letting yourself get in your own way is the biggest lesson I learned from that.
And then you look like you were never unsure of yourself. You're a child actress, right? You had some acting. Yeah, I just
Oh no.
looked up your bio. And I don't know. I think I wanted to ask you something else. You have a lot of followers on Instagram, and you have this other sort of personality, social media personality. How do you get that popular? Actually, I shared this before everybody entered. My husband, Daniel, took my husband's class, Scott's class, screenwriting, and he found out Danny just being on Twitter because Danny is popular on Twitter. You know, how do you be popular on Twitter and Instagram? Do you have any secrets?
I'm not as, must have seen some posts on that were from Instagram on Twitter, because I don't know how to use Twitter. But I follow Scott on Twitter. One note before I lose it on the school being like weird and shut down right now. It's literally the prime time to be home and like trying everything. Like hop on YouTube, try something and you're like, wow, I suck at that. Or like, wow, that was great. Even if it's not media, like with communications, you can do anything in journalism or blogging or writing or like working in the corporate world, whatever it is. You literally like sit at home and like act a fool and completely and totally just try anything. As far as confidence for me, I absolutely was not. I'm kind of the fake it till you make it type person, but I'm still struggling with that. It's for me, I want to live life as like just like a grand adventure, and that's hard because it's not really a job to do that. And so everything that I've done, I've kind of taken a note from my heart and just been like, okay, like follow that, follow what you want to do, follow what makes you happy. And that was to Matt's question earlier, which is like, you don't always have to take that first job that you think you need to take. Like take a second and struggle a little bit. Like Rebekah said, it's like she had 3 months before she got her job, and it probably felt like the worst 3 months ever, because you're like, but it's 3 months, you know, like go back, live with your parents for a moment. Like that's okay. You know, try new things. That's okay. And I think as far as just, it's funny. It's funny that you just say confident. Thank you for that, I guess, because I'm pleased that that's an energy that comes off. But as far as like the social media world, I am fully in the middle of the new media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok world. And so kind of by proxy, when you're in the middle of that and you're working in that environment, it is what is feeding everything around you. And so I would say that that's the biggest attribute to what's given me like a following on social media. But the biggest thing about that is it's a lot of just rose-colored glasses, you know, like you can gain that following, but it just depends on what they're interested in. For me right now, I'm in the midst of this weird spot where they're following me as a voyeur into the company that I work for. So I work for a pretty famous YouTuber, and it's working on identifying myself as an individual, as someone that people want to follow, because that's what I want to go into. I want to go into adventure and travel and doing that type of production for myself and making that into like my own brand, my own industry. But there's a little separation that I'm working on right now, because as I said, I've gained a lot of following, but it's more as a voyeur into the life that I'm like into my work job. If that makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that makes sense. Any questions? And actually, Dr. Williams, the director of undergraduate studies, join us. Elizabeth, do you have any questions for our panelists? I'm not sure you're listening. Yeah. Or the questions you usually have.
No, I mean, I think you all have done such a great job giving our students some ideas as they go out into the world after this semester or after spring semester. And I just appreciate you all taking the time to share with us and give them some confidence that they can do it too. So thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say? Any of you, or Dani or Rebekah, anything that comes to your mind? Actually, one thing you can do, give them tip, is they have to write a paper, the value of the major paper, 2-page paper. I'm not sure that existed while you're here. So, you know, what's the value of communication studies? I mean, I studied English and maybe I do not use it as much, English literature. But I think it's just valuable to me personally, just as a lesson, those novels and the plays I read and poems. What's the value professionally or personally of your major or any part of your major or the education in general, liberal arts education? Because this is a STEM school, CSU is STEM school, you know. Rebekah, you're probably lonely liberal arts major. Or STEM, honestly, 90% STEM. So, you know, why do we still need it? And what's the value? I mean, you guys are lucky to use it actually professionally.
Yeah.
Other than profession, what do you think? What do you think about your major? And this is something that I have to think about this weekend to write that paper. So
I have something if you don't. I always have
Yes,
something.
please.
So in the midst of it, sometimes it doesn't always feel like it's like you understand exactly what you're learning with it. But I'd say with the communications major, it's gonna sound a little on the nose, but it's helped me so much with communicating. And I'm not even joking. It's like through, like, one of my favorite classes was intercultural communication. Have any of you guys taken that? Nope. Okay. It's a great class. So if you have another semester here, take intercultural communication. That interpersonal communication, and also CPD. These are 3 things that I like specifically remember helping me be able to have a conversation with the people around me, for Center for Public Deliberation and a lot of my other communication classes, but specifically this is like understanding how to be in a conversation as someone who's unbiased and just kind of facilitate what's happening around you, and not as much controlling what's happening, but being someone that has knowledge and understanding of how to listen and how to understand what the person is saying and have a conversation instead of talking past each other. We learned it in almost every communication class. We talked about active listening to someone and not talking past each other, and it applies everywhere you go. It applies with your family, it applies in your job interview, and it applies every day in work. And so many people don't understand that communicating is one of the most important things in your day-to-day life. And it may not feel like you completely understand what these classes are going to apply or how they're going to apply. But for like intercultural communication, for me, for example, I travel a lot for my job. I do a lot of travel coordinating. It's one of my hats that I wear at my job. And being able to navigate different cultures as I'm managing a whole group of people going through the world and understanding whether it's just traveling and booking flights and hotels to making my way through that area or that country or that city. I can recall moments when I'm like, okay, this is how I can better understand this culture. This is maybe we're in England and they're like, they're driving on the wrong side of the road. And you're like, it's a little ethnocentric. I learned that in school. You know, it's like, these are things that you can apply that they seem so little at the time. And then you realize that that's what's educating you to be a more equipped person in your life. That's what I got.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and something that I'm thinking about listening to you talk about that, Dani, is like, I think my journalism degree in a lot of ways got me my job, but my communications degree is what's allowed me to keep my job, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very much like, it's a thinker degree, right? Like, I just think I've been thinking about my film classes a lot lately as I've been making these podcast episodes, because it's about story structure and it's about, when does music come in? And so I've been using my film training, I guess, like a lot on the job. To Dani's point about like the CPD, I think about the CPD like every day leading up to this godforsaken election. Like there's just so many, I think also, sorry, I'm trailing off on one thought, but I think this one is better. There are so many hard skills that are valued in the job application process, right? And that's something that we've talked about here today. But I also think that soft skills are unbelievably important. And your communication degree is helping you really hone those soft skills that do make you a better coworker. They make you a better person, I think.
It's a good, this cleared something up, and I think this is good for you guys to notice as well, which is your communication degree. I don't know if you should think of it exactly as like, this degree is like, now I have to think of jobs that are communication. Think of these little pins of things that inspire you or get you excited or get you thinking, and like, that's where maybe you're going to go with your job, but you're going to use your communication degree to better equip you to like exist in that job. Just like Rebekah said, that's what's going to keep your job. That's maybe not going to be the thing that you walk in and be like, I have a communications degree. It's like there's these other skills that you've built on, whether it's your minor or whether it's your extracurricular activities or whatever it is. But the communications degree is something that's literally fortified you as a human being to be able to exist in the world as a better person, as someone who can speak to people, as someone who can be in a room and have a conversation with people, understanding everyone's perspectives and not just yelling past each other. There's so many different things that are depending on which communication classes you've taken, depending on which ones you've enjoyed. There's different things that you're going to pull from each one of them, but each one is going to very much help you in whatever field you choose. And I think that's why it's so broad and hard, but why you can kind of hone it into something specific.
Okay, that's wonderful. Actually, that's a great cheating opportunity. A lot of ideas for their papers due this week. And anything else? Anybody say anything? Otherwise, I really thank you so much for your time. And Rebekah, it's so nice to see you again. And Dani, it's great to meet you. And and I think you I don't know you're faking it or not, but you feel like you present yourself as a very, very competent person and who actually belongs to movie industry, Hollywood. So yeah, it's great to see you both, and thank you for joining everybody. And otherwise, I guess